Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Today, I am talking with Duval. She is the mom of one living daughter and one baby in heaven. In this episode, she talks about the experience of going through a blighted ovum loss. She also discusses her complicated feelings surrounding her friend who was due at the same time that her baby would have been born. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Duval. Duval, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Duval. I am 26. I live in Arizona. I'm originally from the Los Angeles area. I've been married to my wonderful, sweet husband for just over 3 years now, and we are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. My faith has played a huge part in my lost journey. We have one daughter. She was born in March of 2023, so she is about 16 months. And yeah, I'm happy to be on the podcast today.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your lost journey?
Yeah, so we had, as I mentioned, we have one daughter. She was born in March of last year. And it took us only a couple of months, a couple of tries to get pregnant with her. And then just before she turned 1, I started talking with my husband about a second baby. And I know a lot of people are like, I'm not ready for a second baby that soon. And I wasn't sure if I was either. We were talking about it, but we prayed about it and just thought about it. And I really felt like, I feel like there's another baby. I want to have another baby in our family. We'd love to have our kids close in age. And so we decided we were going to try for another baby. And we got pregnant super quickly. It was really honestly such a shock that it happened so fast, but we got pregnant really quickly. And everything was going great. I found out the first feeling I had when I found out was like kind of terror, just something was really scary about that. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. That plays into the story as well. But found out I was pregnant. Everything was going okay. And then about a week or so after I found out, I started having some spotting and it really freaked me out. And when I found out I was having spotting, I was with a friend of mine. She's like my best friend, and she is also pregnant, due at like 5 days before I would have been due. So we were right there with each other. We both found out we were pregnant a day apart. I was with her when I started spotting. I was like, I'm worried I'm having a miscarriage. I was really nervous. So I called my OB's office. And when you call the OB office, you get whoever is on call at the time. I think I called after hours. And so I called them. And this doctor called me back, and it was the same doctor who I'd spoken with a couple times when I had some spotting in my pregnancy with my daughter. And I had some with her throughout the first trimester, but it wasn't quite like this. This was a little bit different. And so I called, and he called me back, and he said the same thing he said with my daughter, which was very nonchalant. He said, basically, could be nothing, could be a miscarriage, wait and see. And that was awful, literally so awful. I know that doctors and OBs probably see this pretty frequently. They see spotting and miscarriage, more frequently, hopefully, than any mom ever has to. But the fact that he was so nonchalant about it in my pregnancy with my daughter, and also this time, really was not helpful at all. It was after hours. I think I was going into the weekend. It was like a Thursday or a Friday. And he said, just wait and see. So I was like, okay, great. It's Friday. Your office is closing. You just told me could be nothing, could be miscarriage. I have no clue. We'll wait and see. And now I have to wait the next 2 or 3 days to call you back and see if I can get in to see if something's wrong. So that's how I was doing. I decided I was going to take it super easy. I was just going to rest, stay on the couch, kind of let my husband take over with my daughter a little bit. And the spotting went away. So about 2 days later, it stopped pretty much completely. And I was so glad. And I know they say you should be concerned with spotting if it's bright red. It wasn't bright red. It was brown. It kind of looked like maybe just old. It wasn't even that much, but still, they say that's how it can start. So that went away, and I was like, great. But I had this inkling, this feeling in me that something was just off. Something was a little bit not quite right. And it was sort of that same feeling I had when I first found out I was pregnant. It was just something was not quite the same as it was with my daughter. And so time went on, and I just got more and more nervous. I kept getting this feeling that something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. And my OB's office said, well, unless you're like actively bleeding, we're not going to see you before your 8-week appointment. So I was trying to contact other OBs, see if I could get in with another practice who would see me earlier than that. People suggested going to one of those private ultrasounds. I could not find a doctor that would see me, quickly. All of the doctors I contacted were like, well, you have to come in for a preliminary appointment, and then we'll have to schedule you a few weeks after that for an ultrasound. And I was like, well, by that point, I'll already be at my 8-week appointment with my regular OB. So I just felt so nervous that something was wrong. And I mentioned this feeling that something was not right, even from the beginning. Over the course of, so between finding out I was pregnant and my first appointment, it was something like 5 weeks. And during those 5 weeks, the feeling, I would say, kept getting worse and worse. And I just kept having this thought in my head of like, how am I going to do 202? Because by the time the baby would have been born in December of this year, my daughter would have been like 21 months. So I was like, how am I going to do 202? And I kept having the thought come to my mind, I don't know that I'm actually going to have to do 202. Like I was pregnant, but I almost felt like I wasn't going to get to meet my baby, which I know some women describe in their miscarriage experience. And it was, I don't know if it was the spirit trying to prepare me or if it was like my body intuitively knowing that something wasn't right, but something wasn't right. So I get to the day of my appointment. The night before our appointment, our very first appointment, I had a dream that we had a miscarriage. I had a dream that the sonographer, or the OB rather, told us there's no heartbeat. And I had therapy that morning. I had a virtual appointment, and I was talking about how, I'm really nervous. I had this dream last night, but I think it's just anxiety. I think I'm just feeling really anxious. I'm going to chalk it up to that. So fast forward a couple hours, I'm getting ready to leave the house to go to the OB's office. And my daughter's napping. I'm about to go wake her up. I'm putting our dog away in the crate before we go. And I just get this awful, overwhelming, intuitive feeling. Something bad is about to happen. And I've had that distinct feeling a couple times in my life. Sometimes it is before something bad happens, but I also have a lot of anxiety. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe that's just my anxiety still, hoping for the best, right? So, anyways, I brush off the feeling, or as best I can, mind you, having had 5 weeks of this feeling that something is wrong leading up to our appointment. So we get to our appointment. My husband comes from work. Our appointment's like the middle of the morning. He took off time from work to be there. And we've got our daughter there. And we get back there, and he puts the gel on me, and he's about to put the wand on me. And I just, again, it was like that very last second thought of like, you're about to see something that you don't want to see. It's not going to be what you want to see. So he puts the wand on, and there's just a black hole. There's a black hole. And with my daughter, I knew what it was supposed to look like. I knew that there was supposed to be something in there, and there wasn't. And so he looks around. It's really quiet. He looks around for a little while. I don't remember exactly what I said or if he spoke first, the OB. My husband actually got it on video. I asked him to record it on video so we could get our first ultrasound. So I haven't gone back to rewatch that video. I can't bring myself to do it up to this point. But he's looking around and he doesn't see anything. And he lets me know that it could be a blighted ovum. And I was like, what the heck is a blighted ovum? We talked about my dates. I said, no, I track everything really precisely. I know exactly when I ovulated. I know exactly how far along I should be down to the day. So he explains, that a blighted ovum is where the egg gets fertilized and it implants, but the baby doesn't develop really very far past that. And so, wow, that was obviously not what I wanted to hear. Meanwhile, my toddler is like freaking out. She doesn't like when any doctors touch mom. She's like, what are you doing? Don't touch my mom. So she's watching the ultrasound and she's like crying. My husband's trying to hold her. My husband tries to put her like on my chest so she can sit on me. And I am like, I don't want to be touched right now. I'm like, I'm not okay. So I asked my husband if he could take her out into the hallway, so she can, if I'm out of sight, maybe she'll be okay and just get some wiggles out. And so the OB and we talk. I ask him a bunch of questions. I don't even remember what I asked him, but just how common is this? Oh, I also forgot to mention I've been type 1 diabetic for 20 years. In my first pregnancy, it did not play much of a part at all. I was able to keep my blood sugars in good check. This time, one of my first thoughts is it related to my diabetes? Because you often hear that if you have diabetes, you're at higher risk for miscarriage or birth complications. So I asked him, is it related to my diabetes? He said, no, usually it's due to a chromosomal abnormality where something happened with the sperm or the egg, or they met up but just didn't quite develop properly. And so I asked him, well, why is my body not recognizing it yet? He said, sometimes it just takes a while. for your body to recognize. And at this point, I was about 8.5 weeks pregnant. And I hadn't bled. I hadn't had, other than the spotting I had early on. I asked him, was that related? Could that have been an indication that something was wrong? He said, maybe, I don't know. It could have been normal. It's all these like questions about pregnancy and fertilization and implantation. It's like, could it be normal? Could not be normal. I guess we'll just wait and see.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah, right? Like, okay, that's women's healthcare in that way kind of drives me crazy. I know we can't know everything at this time because there's still a lot of research that has to be done, but I feel like, okay, let's give the healthcare that these women need. If not, evidence-based, we don't have evidence for that yet, then at least compassionate-based. You know what I mean?
Yes. Like you don't just have to be like, well, guess it could be, come back later,
Exactly. And so I'm really grateful that the OB that I was able to see for my first appointment, he was super compassionate. He was not my normal OB who I had with my daughter. The normal OB I saw, he was out sick or something for a month or two. So I want to bring in an important point here because this is a very difficult part of my loss journey. I have, like I mentioned, my best friend who's also pregnant. She's due 5 days before I was going to be due. We have the same OB and we had our appointments on the same morning, an hour apart. So after crying for a while in the room, my husband came back. We put our daughter in the stroller. We were on the floor praying. I was crying really hard. We were in there for so long that the OB actually came back to check on us. And, it was kind of, I think, his gentle way of saying, hey, we need this room. Are you able to pack it up and move? So my best friend, she texted me afterwards. She's all excited. Hey, how did it go? And oh my gosh, my heart shattered. I don't even remember what I texted her back. I think I said something like, it didn't go so great. I'm having a blighted ovum miscarriage. I'm not doing great. And from that point on, I did not want to see her. I could not see her. That was the start of a really difficult emotional aspect of my loss. Was not only was I dealing with a loss, but I also have a best friend who we made such a big deal that we were pregnant at the same time. Our babies could have been best friends. One day maybe they could have gotten married, who knows? But now it's like, okay, she gets to keep her baby and I've lost mine, which is not her fault at all. And it was a really complicated, it still is a complicated aspect of my loss journey. And I can touch on that as well. So my husband had left work. He worked like 30 minutes away. He left work to be at our appointment thinking it wasn't going to take that long. He was gone for a couple of hours. Finally, he went back to work and he was like, are you sure? I can come home. I can take the rest of the day off. I said, no, you go back to work. I will call my parents and ask them to come and take my daughter. Just watch her because I was not in a place to solo parent for the rest of the day. So I called my mom. I cried. I told her what was happening. They came down immediately. They live like 45 minutes away. They came down. They helped me watch my daughter for the rest of the day. And I believe they came back the next day as well. Our first appointment was on a Wednesday. They came, I think, on Wednesday and Thursday, maybe even Friday. I don't remember. But one of the feelings that I had was my daughter having just turned 1. She still was really little. She was still a baby. And now she's, running and climbing and talking, but then she was just learning to do some of those things. And so largely she still reminded me of little babies. It was so bad that I, for the first couple of days, maybe week or two, I couldn't look at her without having this flood of emotion, thinking about little babies and the little baby that I lost and all that I was going to miss. And I remember being in my husband's in my bedroom, and I think our daughter had gone to sleep. And I looked down on the floor, and a pair of her little shoes were on the floor. And I lost it. It just reminded me of this little baby that I was not going to get to meet. So the OB wanted to see me back. He wanted me to do some blood work, check my HCG levels, my progesterone levels to confirm I was having a miscarriage. He wanted to see me back the next week for an ultrasound, just in case my dates were wrong and maybe there would be a baby there, but I already knew. I knew that I tracked everything. I knew that what was happening. And so I did the blood work. It confirmed that I was having a miscarriage. And that was the start of a really kind of mind-boggling part of miscarriage that I think so many women go through, but we don't talk about it as much as a part of miscarriage, is that stage where you find out that you are miscarrying and you haven't miscarried yet. And you don't know how long it's going to take. So my husband and I were trying to make plans. Do we take the medicine? Do I opt for a DNC? Do I just wait for it to happen naturally? There's a a baby. To me, I know a lot of women with blighted ovums, they process by saying that, well, it wasn't really a baby yet. For me, I process by saying that is my baby, just very small and didn't develop past a certain point. So for me, I have my baby inside of me who's no longer alive. And it's just kind of an indefinite waiting period of like a week, 2 weeks, who knows? I have to go back to the doctor. So we were trying to make plans, my HCG is now at this level. It was dropping this fast. I could start bleeding on this day. What do we do? Do I call you from work? So just a bunch of trying to make plans. I went back to my OB the following week and the first day that we had our first ultrasound appointment and I was leaving the office, my OB said, come back in a couple hours, do some lab work. We'll get an HCG draw. And as I was walking out, we had been there for so long. Our appointment started at like 10 or 11 something, and it was now noon, 12:30. So everybody had left to go to lunch except for one person at the front desk, and there was nobody in the waiting room, thank goodness. Because when I left, they gave me this little card to give to the front desk to reschedule for my next appointment, and they indicate on there that it's a miscarriage follow-up. And so I handed her the slip of paper, and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss." And I just, oh my gosh, I was fighting back tears so hard. I just wanted to scream and sob. It was the worst. And I was so glad that nobody else was in there to see me like choking on my tears. So I went back the next week for the follow-up appointment and he did an ultrasound. And sure enough, there was still nothing there. I already knew that. And that was on a Thursday, I believe. I believe that was a Thursday. Or maybe it was a Wednesday. I don't remember. So he said that he recommends the medication. And I said, well, based on my research, that's kind of what I'm opting for as well. And so he prescribed me the medication and I went to go pick it up. And my intention was to take it that Saturday, so a couple days after my appointment. And I, again, in that time frame of just, I'm pregnant, but I'm not going to get to keep this baby. And my baby is dead, is no longer with me. And it feels like such a cruel torture. Like you're just, you're pregnant, but you're waiting at any moment to lose your baby. And it's so awful to be in that waiting period. And I understand why, sometimes they suggest that you wait for it to happen naturally, or sometimes they say you should go for D&C or whatever it is that they recommend for you. But just that waiting period of like, what is happening in my body? I don't know where my HCG levels are. I know what's going to happen. I don't know when it's going to happen. It was awful. So I got the medication. My husband and I had planned that weekend, that Saturday, to just lay low. His parents were going to take our daughter so she'd get to spend grandma and grandpa time while he was at home with me. I'd done a lot of research and a lot of women said my experience with the medication, I think it's called misoprostol, it's like Cytotec or something, it was so awful. I took it and I bled and I threw up and I was cramping and it was so bad and it was horrible and I went to the ER. I was like, okay, I'm prepared. So I got some heating pads. I got some of my favorite foods for the weekend. I was ready. A couple days before that, on Thursday, I'd started bleeding. And it wasn't super heavy. It wasn't super bad. But I started bleeding and I bled through Thursday night. Friday, I was still bleeding. And so I thought, okay, I still want to take this medication on Saturday. So I was gearing up. I was really nervous for the time I was going to start the medication. We sent our daughter off with grandma and grandpa, and I started the medication. And I had the suppositories at first. So I inserted the suppositories and then I waited and I waited. And the doctor said it should take about 2 hours. I think I inserted them at maybe, oh gosh, I don't remember. It was sometime between noon and 2 p.m. So I'd inserted them and I was at home with my husband by myself waiting and nothing happened. And I was waiting, nothing happened. And I did some Googling. How long does it take the medicine to work? Oh, it took 30 minutes for me. It took 2 hours for me. It took 4 hours for me. So 30 minutes went by, 2 hours went by, 4 hours went by, nothing. And I had the second dose that I was supposed to take 8 hours after the first dose. So by the time that 7 o'clock rolls around, 7 p.m., I believe that I'd inserted it probably closer to noon because I think I remember it had been about 7 hours. I started to get some cramps. And they weren't bad cramps. They were just little itty bitty cramps. And I started to get some cramps and I told my husband, oh yeah, I feel that. And they got a little worse. And I would say that as a teenager, I'd had worse period cramps than that at its worst. It was not that bad for me, but I started cramping. I was sitting on the couch and then the cramping stopped. And I stood up and I came into the kitchen where my husband was, and I felt a clot. I felt a clot come out. And so I went upstairs to our bathroom and I took this clot, and I wasn't sure. We had also decided what do we want to do with the tissue that I pass. A lot of women, will throw it away, they'll flush it, some will cremate it, some will bury it. We decided we were going to bury it in this beautiful pot we have on our patio, so we'd always have it close. And so I passed this clot and I took it, and I couldn't tell what it was because you couldn't even see the baby on ultrasound. So the cells were still so small, the baby was still so small. There's no way I could have told what I was looking at, but I tried to rinse it out and kind of take a look and see. I couldn't make anything of it. And so I thought, well, that might be the placenta or something. And so I decided I would flush that part down the toilet. And then a little while later, maybe a couple hours later, I had inserted the second dose, and then I had another clot come out. And then I think it was about then that I realized, oh, the first clot was probably where my baby was, and the second clot was probably my placenta. And that is something that I still sit with. It's really hard for me. They don't prepare you for that. They don't tell you that in your OB appointment. He said it should just be like bad period cramps, take this much Tylenol, this much ibuprofen, but they don't tell you, what's going to come out first and what you should look for, what it's going to look like. And so that's something that I still think about, that I did not know it, but I flushed my baby down the toilet. And that, I don't know if I will ever not feel bad about that, but I know that I didn't know. And so that helps me to feel a little bit better that it was not my intention to do that. My intention was to do something different, but I was unprepared and I didn't know what I was looking at. So we kept the placental tissue. We ended up burying it in the patio, in the pot on our patio. And we said a few words. It was very emotional. That pot no longer has flowers in it. Flowers have since died, but I will still go and put water in that pot every now and again and just say a quick hello to our baby. We ended up naming the baby Wren. We never got to know if it was a boy or a girl. It was too soon. But I think Wren's a fitting name because wrens are birds and they fly. And Wren is, somewhere flying high, I'm sure. So that was an awful experience. I bled for a little while. Oh, and then I had I hope this isn't TMI. I had really bad diarrhea that night, so bad. And I called the on-call doctor and I was like, hey, I had maybe 30 minutes of cramping total and 2 big clots, and that's it. And from what I read, I was expecting it to be the worst experience of my life. Am I missing something? Did I not pass everything? And the on-call provider, she said, oh, it sounds like, you might not have passed everything. I'll prescribe you another dose. You can take it tomorrow. So Sunday, I went to pick it up, took another dose, nothing. Nothing at all. And then I think I took the second dose. I kind of split it up between the suppository and orally because you can switch them up. And nothing happened. So I was like, okay, I guess I passed everything. I bled for maybe another week and a half, and then it stopped. I had my follow-up appointments with my OB, and I still was not able to see my normal OB who I love. I was seeing this other OB who's also really great and compassionate. I'm really grateful that he was so compassionate during this experience. But I went back, he checked, he said, yeah, looks like you passed everything. I don't see anything. We'll do a blood draw just to see where your levels are at. My HCG was at a 10. And then my experience following that I'm sorry, let me know if I'm talking too much. There's so many parts to this story, but my experience following that was also tricky. I was really struggling with my faith. People would say things trying to make me feel better. They'd say the common platitudes, everything happens for a reason, maybe it just wasn't your time and God just wanted you to, whatever it may be. And I even believed those at the very beginning. In fact, I texted my friend who's pregnant. I was like, I'm just trying to come to terms with the fact that it was the right time for you, but not the right time for us. And that really deeply was hurting me for some reason, that idea that it was just God's will. It wasn't our time yet. And I've since come to realize I don't believe that. And I'm not trying to pass this off as doctrine. This is just my personal experience and my thoughts, but I when people say everything happens for a reason, my response to that now is actually, I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that God pre-plans every single painful thing that's ever going to happen to us in our lives before we even get here. I don't think I came to this earth destined to have a miscarriage in May of 2024, you know? I
Mhm.
think sometimes bad and awful things happen because we live in a fallen world with fallen imperfect bodies that sometimes do things imperfectly, and it's really painful and awful, you know. But if somebody came up to me and punched me in the nose and broke my nose, we wouldn't say, oh, it happened for a reason, right? Like, no, not everything is pre-planned. Not every awful thing that happens is so, you know, premeditated. I think sometimes things just happen, but that's why I'm so grateful for my relationship with God, because I believe that even in those spaces where something awful and horrible and unplanned happens, he still has the power to pick us up and carry us through that. So that's kind of where I've been at with my faith journey, and what I've been trying to tell people when they say everything happens for a reason. I don't believe that everything has a reason at the outset. I believe that God sometimes pre-plans things, but sometimes doesn't, but creates a reason for it, makes us better for it on the other side of it. So after our miscarriage, I had done some research, and we were deciding when do we want to try again. And I'd done some research that said, you know, you can try again. Recent research is showing there's no real reason to wait unless you have a specific pregnancy issue or a molar pregnancy. There's typically no reason to wait to get pregnant again. I talked to the OB. He said, oh, we usually recommend waiting 3 to 6 months. I said, okay, can you tell me why? And he was like, he didn't really give me a super concrete reason in that visit. And so I just kind of filled in the blank. I was like, is it because that's just kind of what sounds most logical? He's like, yeah, you know, give the uterus time to rebuild the lining and these things. And I was like, okay. So I went home, and my husband and I, we talked about it, we prayed about it, and we're like, we want to try again right away. So we started trying again right away. And I had a really weird day a couple weeks after my miscarriage where all of a sudden I got a positive ovulation test for one day. It was really strong for one day, and then it went away. So a few weeks after that, I was checking for pregnancy, and I had taken the little cheap internet test strips every
Mhm.
day for a while to watch my levels go down. Or, you know, I know it's not qualitative, but just to see, is it negative? So I did that, and it was negative. And then I took a first response test a few weeks after that, and it was positive. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, cautiously excited. Is this a new pregnancy, or is it leftovers from my old pregnancy? So I called the OB's office. I was like, hey, I was taking these cheap tests. They were negative. I just took a first response test. It's possible that I'm pregnant, you know. And so the nurse called me back, and this was an awful experience. This was one of the worst experiences I think I had post miscarriage care. She called me back, and she said, it's probably leftover from your last pregnancy. And I'm gonna paraphrase what she said. It's probably leftover from your last pregnancy. Also, the doctor wants you to know you shouldn't be trying right now. You should be using protection. He doesn't want you to, but he wants you to wait for a couple of seconds. Just this very like condescending tone that I felt like I was a 14-year-old girl being scolded for doing something naughty. It was awful.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I felt like, okay, I understand what the doctor's recommendation is. I also understand I, as an autonomous person, am able to make, you know, medical decisions for myself. Whether the doctor is comfortable with that or not, that's okay. If he doesn't want to be my provider, if he's not comfortable with supporting me through trying again so soon, I get that. There are plenty of other providers who live, you know, who work in the area that I live that would say, you're totally fine to try again right away. So I just felt like that was kind of ridiculous of the office to respond in such a condescending way.
Well, especially when he couldn't even really give you a good reason why you needed to wait.
Yeah, that was really frustrating. And I'd done a lot of research, and I'd said to him, I'm not the doctor. You went to medical school for this. I am not saying I know more than you. Here's what I found. Recent research is showing this. Can you tell me why this? And if he'd given me a good concrete reason, I would have been like, oh, that makes sense. He did not give me a good concrete reason. And so, and also maybe because I've been diabetic for so long, and I'm used to kind of researching and trying to make decisions for my healthcare, my medical care that work for me. And so that's what we decided to do. I ended up seeing another midwife, and she was like, yeah, no, you're totally fine to try again. Like, unless you had, you know, a molar pregnancy or whatever it was, you're totally fine to try again. So that's where we're at now. The last few months have been a roller coaster with some slight indents, some almost positives, and then negatives. And each time I get my period, it's like worse and worse. And I wake up in the morning like super sad. It's pretty tough right now. But The last thing I wanted to touch on was, and then of course, if you wanted to talk about music or anything else like that, but I feel like it's important to talk about my experience with my friend who's pregnant. I see a lot of people on miscarriage forums, a lot of moms asking, saying my best friend or my sister-in-law or my coworker is pregnant and I'm trying so hard to be happy for them, but I'm having a really hard time. Is it wrong of me to feel that way? And I just want to scream, no, it is not wrong, because you're not hating your friend. You're not being a jerk and saying, I wish this happened to you. Like, we wouldn't wish it on anybody, right? You
Right.
can be happy for somebody else and be so sad for your own experience. And so I'm so grateful that my best friend, has been so conscious of that. And she's not made me feel bad at all for feeling the way I do. For a while, I did not speak to her for like 3 weeks straight. I didn't contact her. I didn't reach out to her. Eventually, I texted her this really long text message just explaining where I was at and how I am struggling. This has been really hard for me. Everything reminds me of Ren. And I feel angry towards you, not because you've done anything wrong. You have not done anything wrong. I feel angry towards you because I feel that it's unfair that you got to keep your baby and I don't. And I know spiritually that's not where I want to be at. Emotionally, that's not who I am as a person, but that's where I'm at right now in my grief process. And I need to let myself move through that grief step by step. She was like, I totally understand. I get it. And we've had a couple of bumps in the road. There have been some times where she's gone through a fair amount of loss and pain in her life. And she would say, I understand what you're feeling and I get it. And I finally worked up the courage to calmly and lovingly tell her, your loss is so valid and your experiences of loss in your life are very real. But for a happily pregnant woman who's never had a miscarriage to tell me that she knows how I feel when I'm grieving my baby that I've lost, it feels like salt in the wound. And she, like, everything that I've told her, every time I've had to give her a little bit of like a correction, so to speak, she's taken it with so much grace. She's taken it in stride, and I love that about her.
She sounds
Um,
like an amazing friend, honestly.
really is. I seriously could not have asked for a better friend to, have by my side as I go through this, so to speak. I'm still not in a place where I can chat with her all the time, meet up with her quite yet all the time. I did run into her last week and we were planning to get together this week, but then I injured myself and now I can't move very well. So we're
Oh
waiting.
no.
Yeah. But that was really, really hard. And one of the things I had to let myself feel and give myself space for is just, yeah, I'm going to feel angry. I'm going to feel jealous. I'm going to feel upset. I'm going to feel that it's not fair. And I don't want to hear about your pregnancy right now. I can't hear about, your ultrasounds. I can't. And so she wanted to know, I wanted to know the gender. And I was bracing myself for weeks, Sarah, for weeks to find out the gender, knowing as soon as I see that post on Facebook, I'm probably going to have a really, really bad day. Just that's where I'm at. And so she told me, well, we're probably not going to post the gender or post about it until we know the gender, for a while. And so we were texting one day and she said, oh, is now a good time to find out the gender? I was like, now's as good a time as any. And she asked me if I could record my response to finding out the gender. And she has one little boy already. And she said, can you record your response to finding out the gender so I can put it into a video, maybe for the baby down the line? And I felt simultaneously so bad and also a little angry. And I had to lovingly tell her my response is not going to be worth recording. Unfortunately, I'm not able to participate in those super happy celebratory parts of your pregnancy right now as much as I really, really want to. I am hurting so much and I'm grieving the loss of my child and I'm just not there right now. So I found out that she's having a little girl, which also at first was really hard because that, again, like salt in the wound, like you're getting everything you want. You get the little girl you want, happy, healthy pregnancy. I'm over here grieving the loss of a baby and can't get pregnant again yet for some reason. So that was really tough. Over time, I have moved a little bit from that mindset more into just kind of disconnecting my experience from hers. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, her pregnancy, her baby reminds me of Ren, I've been able to look at it a little bit more as my best friend's having a baby girl. And that's super exciting for her. And I'm really glad she is. I'm still not 100% there, but I'm getting there. Last night, I dropped off some soup to her at her door and she texted me and said, oh, I don't know if this is okay to share, but when you were here, the baby girl kicked so hard while you were here. And I did not respond to that text. I didn't even open it for hours. And then last night in the middle of the night, I just broke down crying. It was like 2 a.m. and I was like sobbing. Like I would be feeling my baby kick right now. I would be, knowing the gender right now because we were 5 days apart in our due date. And so I still have some really, really tough days with it all. loss is messy and it's not linear, and some days feel really fine and other days, and mostly right now I'm kind of in these days where it's just I wake up and I'm like, I feel awful, and it's so hard to get up and take care of my other baby that deserves the best. So I have to find the strength to do that. I pray for help, and we get up and we get moving, but man, it is so hard.
It is. I mean, I kind of had a similar thing happen when I had one of my early losses that somebody else I knew was pregnant at the same time. And yeah, like you, I lost mine, but she kept hers. And it's just like I couldn't talk to her. I couldn't participate in any of it. I couldn't go to the baby shower. I'm like, I just can't do this.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I think so many moms go through. And again, I see these moms posting on these forums, am I a bad person for not going to the baby shower? I'm like, no, if you cannot do it, that's okay. If you broke your leg, nobody would be saying, why aren't you running that marathon? Like, if you can't show up to the starting line and you need to sit this one out, it's okay. And that's kind of where I'm at. And I think the process of grief is so, like I said, it's so nonlinear. You might expect yourself to feel, once you start feeling better about some things, shouldn't I feel better about all the things? No, some days I have a really great. I also probably won't be attending any baby showers anytime soon. And both of those can exist at the same time. It's so hard when you have somebody close to you that's pregnant, in a similar stage of pregnancy that you were or would have been, because it is like a direct reminder of that. And I think about, like, is her baby going to be a direct reminder to me of Ren every day that I see them, or is it eventually going to get better? And I think different women's experiences are different. I really don't know. We'll have to cross that bridge when we get there, but that is so hard. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that too.
Yeah, I think you're right though. Like, all these people are made to feel like they're a bad person for having these feelings. And I feel like sometimes people, I mean, I guess like put it in quotes, like society expects us all to be good people, happy for everybody, and prioritize that over our own mental health, if that makes sense.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many times I see comments on these posts of women who are being vulnerable and saying, I'm sorry that I'm feeling this way, but I'm just not happy and I can't go to the baby shower. And somebody comments and says something like, well, you should just be happy for them. It's like, oh my gosh, of course you should be happy for them and you can be, but like, it's okay if you're also really angry and jealous and upset for a minute, because that's how you move through that feeling. You can't just brush it aside and say, I don't feel that way. Everything's fine. Like,
Right.
you gotta be honest with yourself.
Well, plus then you just bottle it up and then it all explodes. And I mean, you definitely don't want that exploding at the baby shower, right?
Oh my gosh, definitely not. Definitely not. I have a friend who has gone through infertility, and when I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to be really sensitive of that. And so I told her, if you need space, if you don't want to talk to me for the next X number of whatevers, that's okay. She was like, no, I'll be okay. I might need a little bit of time, but I'll be okay. She came to my baby shower, and I texted her a couple of weeks ago and I was like, I know our experiences haven't been exactly the same, but I just want to say that, like, I knew you were strong before, but now having lived through this experience of not having something that I want so badly and seeing other people around me have that thing, it's like I feel like so many people around me are getting pregnant or are pregnant and they're, doing great. I'm like, I see a little bit more of the strength that you have to have and that you have had, and I admire you so much for it. And our experiences are not the same. I can't claim to know exactly what she's gone through, how she feels about it, but I was like, I just want you to know, I see a little bit of that strength that you have to have, and man, it is tough, and you're amazing. Every mom who's going through a miscarriage who feels bad about the way she's feeling or processing, I just want to hold her and say, you are doing something that some people will never have to go through and never know how difficult it is, and you still get up every day and you still take care of yourself every day, or do what you need to or you can. That is so much. When you've lost a pregnancy, when you've lost not only a baby, but hopes and dreams and a lifetime of milestones that you were planning for, the second you get that positive test, when you've lost that and you are still going about your day to day, that is amazing. So don't feel bad that you're feeling really upset. Don't feel bad that you're feeling sad. Don't feel bad that you couldn't get out of bed until noon today. Like, you are living, you are still progressing forward through this awful, painful experience. And like, I think that's part of what, we're sent here on earth to do, is to go through these really awful things sometimes, but you're doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, how many people, or how many stories I've heard of people like they have a miscarriage and then immediately go back to work the same day, or miscarry at work, or still take care of their living children or their other family members, or like all the other million things that we have to do as women, and we just keep doing it despite what we're going through.
Yeah, I there are so many expectations that are put on us, not just with postpartum. I felt it with my daughter postpartum, but also with miscarriage, this like bounce back culture that we should just bounce right back to it. And especially with a pregnancy loss. And I feel like my experience with a blighted ovum is I've not experienced a later miscarriage, but with my blighted ovum, it almost felt like this a little bit of pressure, like, well, it wasn't even a baby, right? So can't you just like try again, just like get back to life? I reached a point where I felt eventually after my miscarriage, like pretty much everybody has forgotten about this. And that's okay. It's not their job to remember it. It's not their job to, check in with me every day. But I feel sad because I will never forget my baby. And I feel like to some people, they will never remember my baby again, you know?
Yeah, no,
And
I mean,
that's,
I completely understand that. Even me, like, losing Jasmine later on, I mean, I still have, people that I feel like have forgotten. And it's sad when, we think about our babies every day and we remember them every day. And yeah, like you said, it's not their responsibility, but it would be nice if they remembered our babies, right?
yeah. Yeah. That's something that my husband and I haven't talked about extensively yet, but I'd be interested to know what you do to remember your baby or your babies that you've lost and, how you honor their memory. We haven't really talked much about what we're going to do for Ren, but I want to do something.
Yeah, every year we celebrate her birthday the day that she was here. So, we sing her happy birthday. We usually do like cupcakes or something. I always get a candle for how old she would be that year. And we do that. And that's kind of our thing as a family. And then, I do other random things other years. I've done like acts of kindness, things like that.
Oh, I love that to do something in honor, like an act of service in honor of them. And I think that's so beautiful because I've heard before, it might have been on your podcast before that somebody had said, your baby is love. Your baby is, they're nothing but love. There's no pain and sorrow and sadness there. And I think that's one of the hardest parts is we as their moms, we carry that sadness. We
Yes.
carry it's that awful feeling of like my baby is somewhere without me and I can't get to them and I can't pick them up and hold them and tell them I love them and are they safe and do they know I love them and that they're okay. But they probably are happy as can be.
But
And so
yeah, it is hard. It's a unique challenge that we have to carry as the moms.
yeah, it sucks.
It
But to do
does.
rooted in happiness and love, I think is a great way to honor a baby that's not here with us.
So I know you said that music has been an important part of your life, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So
Um,
how did that help you with your healing?
yeah, so I love writing music. I majored in theater arts in college, and specifically, I did a lot of musical theater for years, and I'm trying to get back into my musical theater coaching, and that's kind of where my heart is. But music specifically as a tool for processing and coping has been indispensable for me. I've written songs for like 10 years on and off, but recently I wrote two songs that have helped me to process my loss. One of them was a song to Ren, and it's called Ren's Song, or I guess an alternative title is Fly or something. I don't remember. I gave it some title like that, but I wrote that song, and it's kind of a guitar ballad, and it talks about knowing that you would love the baby, but not knowing that you would lose them so soon. And because Ren also means little bird, the chorus says, "Fly, my little baby, fly, my little Ren. While you fly, my little birdie, I'll have faith that this is not the end." And so just trying to like add in a tinge of that hope that I will see Ren again, either in this life or the next life. I don't know how that all works, but I have faith that I'll see Ren again. And then a second song that I wrote was a little bit more on the hopeful side. That song is called If There's a Spirit. And in our faith, we believe that there's something called the premortal life where we all live as spirit children with God, with Heavenly Father, before we come to earth in bodies. And it's a beautiful place. And there we're learning and we're preparing to come here to earth to face the things that we might have to face here. And so that song is about hey, if there's a spirit up there in the premortal life who's just kind of finishing packing up their bags and finishing up their last classes and hugging their friends goodbye, I don't want to rush them, but could you come down soon, please? So that was kind of a little more lighthearted, but it's not that having another baby ever replaces the baby that you've lost, ever. No one could ever replace Ren. I think having lost Ren, it adds to that desire for me to it opens my eyes more to, wow, this is something that I really do want. I really do want to bring another baby to our family. So that song is about, hey, can you come down here kind of quickly whenever you're done?
Like, I've been waiting. I'm ready now, please.
Yeah, for real. And now this is the longest time that it's taken us to conceive, which it's still not that long of a time. I know some people try for a very, very long time, but that song really resonates with me right now. I'm like, okay, whenever you're ready, we're ready.
But I feel too that like when you're trying after loss, like every month feels like 6 months. It feels longer somehow.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's awful. Every month feels longer and every negative test feels harder and every period feels worse. It's like it's it comes with this added like my innocence and my ability to feel joy in the process of trying to conceive and having a pregnancy has been stripped away. I feel like I've lost a sense of my innocence because now not only am I hoping that I'll get pregnant this month, but also remembering my loss and remembering, my baby that I've lost and how far along I would have been. Okay, I'm not pregnant. I really want another baby though. How do we add another baby to our family? We're doing everything we can. And it's worse. It is, there's no good way around, there's no good way to say it. It is worse.
Yeah, I know, like trying for pregnancy is not fun with infertility and loss. It's just like, okay, it's like it almost feels like a chore sometimes. Okay, let's just try this month and hope it's not a negative, and let's hope we get to keep this one. And it makes it also sad.
Yes, it does. And I think having gotten pregnant the first two times relatively quickly, it's making this time around feel like, well, oh my gosh, the last time, trying to conceive with our daughter, it was like, man, the first couple tries are negatives, and that's really hard. How long am I gonna have to go through that? Oh, it's positive. And now it's like, not only have I lost a baby, not only did I have poor experiences with doctors afterwards, not only do I have a friend who's currently pregnant and is a direct reminder of the baby that I've lost, as much as she is trying not to be, which is not her fault. But now every negative test, month after month after month, it's like there's a part of me at the end of every cycle, the beginning of my period, where I'm like, I give up. I've lost all hope. There's no point. And then eventually, a few weeks later, I start to rebuild that confidence. But there is an added worry of that, I think, that also is not talked about enough of like, how much of this do I have in me? How much, there are some women that go through that for years and I admire their strength. I don't know how they do it. How much of that strength and gumption do I have to keep going?
Yeah, that is something, especially when, people, like you said, who are going through infertility or having trouble getting pregnant after loss or who go through like recurrent loss. I mean, like just so many different situations where I'm just like, man, I say this all the time. I hate when people tell me I'm strong, but seriously, lost moms are very, very strong people.
That's so true. It's like I have no choice but to be strong. So yes, I'm very strong.
But it's like, but don't tell me that, but I can say it about myself, okay?
Yes. No, because it's almost like you're so strong. It's almost like trying to downplay it or say you'll be fine or it'll be okay and it's like it's not okay though. Like I have no choice. This is my reality. I don't get a plan B. I don't get another option to say, well, I guess this month I'll just decide to get pregnant. I'll just decide and it'll happen. It's like no, I have to face every month of negatives and I have to face the reality that I've lost a baby or for someone I've lost many babies and it's like there's no way around being strong. I have to be strong, but don't try to make me feel better about it.
Right. Yeah, only say it if you mean it. And that's just kind of like something people say,
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, and I try to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say like they think it's helpful.
Yes, people say a lot of things they think are helpful, and I'm trying to patiently and lovingly offer people alternatives and explain why something that they say isn't actually helpful. And so that's been good for me. It's mostly been with my direct family, but I think sometimes people, especially people who haven't gone through loss, And even me, before I had a loss, I would have said the same things. Everything happens for a reason. You're so strong. And now I'm like, that is not what I need to hear right now. Let me help you out with what you can say that's helpful. And I tell people the most helpful thing you can say, I think, in my experience, and not everybody's going to be the same who's gone through a loss, but I think universally, almost universally, a lot of people would say the most helpful thing you can say, the least harmful thing you can say is just, I'm sorry. That's awful. And that's it.
Yeah.
You don't know
I
what
think
else to
that's all
say.
we want. Like, just acknowledge that we're hurting. Don't try to make it better. You can't make it better. Don't try to like downplay it. Don't try to tell us how we should feel. Just say, I'm sorry. It sucks.
Yes, because every other platitude that people offer is trying to downplay it and make us feel better. I think because people are uncomfortable with people having negative, difficult experiences, you know? So I've told people before, like, let me have my experience. My experience right now is not good, and you can't say anything to make it better. So I need you to get comfortable with me being in a bad place right now. And that's where I'll be for a while. And then it will get better. And it has, and it is, but it's like, let me go through that bad place. You can't make it better. I have to just walk through it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the perfect thing to tell people. And I think it's important that we do tell them, hey, this wasn't a helpful comment. Here's something, in the future that would be more helpful. Because honestly, I don't think most people have bad intentions. I think they just say things they think are comforting without really thinking about it.
Exactly. I agree with that. Most people are just trying to do the right thing and have no clue what the right thing is right now.
So is there anything else that you would like to share or add?
I'm so grateful for the lost community. And I know I mentioned before about my coaching. It's not really directly related, but if it's okay, I might like to touch on that.
Yeah, sure.
So I majored in theater arts in college. I went to the University of Pennsylvania, and I did musical theater and acting for a long time, for like over 12 years, 11, 12 years, and it became my passion. I worked in coaching for a little while. I was a dance teacher for a hot minute. Having had my daughter, I kind of had to step away from that. I'm a full-time mom now, but I rediscovered in the middle of us having our loss, what do I want to do? What would make my heart happy? And that's acting coaching. So I'm trying to get back into acting coaching. I do have an email if anybody is interested in that. I work with younger kids, mostly like middle and high school is kind of my target range, but I can share the email if that would be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, you can share.
It's my first name, Duval, Duval, last name Hansen, Hansen. It's Duval Hansen Coach. Sorry, Duval Hansen Coach at gmail.com. So that's something that I'm really passionate about that I also feel like helps with processing really difficult things is acting. I mean, it's helped me for a long time. So if anybody's interested in that, I offer those services for middle and high school students. And yeah, I'm super grateful for the lost community. I'm super grateful for podcasts like yours that make it more transparent and that are so much clearer than what you might get even from your OB, even from a medical office. Hearing real women's experiences is wonderful. So thank you for the work that you do and for sharing your story and other people's stories. And you make the miscarriage community, as horrible as it is to be a part of it in the first place, you make it a better place. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. No, that means a lot to me. That's my goal because, like you said, we all have different experiences, and so many of us are not getting the information we need from our doctors. So we have to turn to each other.
For real. I'm so glad we have a sisterhood of people who can be there for us, right?
Yeah, it's like, you always hear it's the worst club with the best members, but it's true.
That's true. That's true.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me on, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Duval, for sharing your story with us. I appreciate you sharing about how your friend was pregnant at the same time and all the complicated feelings you had surrounding the situation. As we talked about, it's something that's so common in the loss community. It's something we're afraid to talk about sometimes. We may feel guilty for not being happy or for feeling jealous or sad about someone else's pregnancy. It's important to point out that you are not wrong for how you feel. You're not a bad person. You're simply human. You're hurting and you're missing your baby and sad about your situation. At the same time, you shouldn't be made to feel guilty about how you feel. Anyone who shames you or makes you feel bad isn't a real friend and definitely isn't being supportive. It just takes time to process our feelings and our grief. And sometimes things get better, but we may always have complicated feelings surrounding pregnancy and children after going through loss. Just remember, always be gentle with yourself. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.